My name is Rahasia, and I'm with Lotus Guide magazine, and we're getting ready to do an interview with Jean Gallack. She is the originator and the creator of Earthcalm products that protect us all from EMF waves. And what got me interested in this subject in the first place was I read something here a while back, and let me just say this. If I told you that we experience 1,000 times more EMF waves than our grandparents did in their environment, I think we would all take that pretty serious. But the truth is, it's 100 million times more EMF waves in our environment than our grandparents experienced. So I think we need to pay attention to this because obviously the government isn't. Although you can go to other countries like Sweden, different European countries, Canada, they're all paying a lot of attention to this. And it's one of the things that our government just simply will not step up to the plate until it's way down the road. So we need to take advantage and take responsibility for ourselves and get really well informed and take some common sense actions. Thank you. Okay, today we're going to be interviewing Jean Gallack from Earthcalm. Hello Jean, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks.
It's been a while since we've talked. We had an interview a few years ago, and that's been a while ago.
Yeah, I remember that. I really enjoyed talking with you. I feel like we really got into some deep stuff. That was really interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot to talk about. And actually what prompted me to do another interview, a follow-up with you, is I started looking into the EMF waves and what's really going on. And I realized that most people don't really get it. They don't get that we're experiencing 100 million times more EMF than our grandparents did.
Right.
I mean, if somebody would tell me, yeah, we're getting like 100 times more EMF than our grandparents, I would think, oh my God, that's not too good, you know. But 100 million times more, and with all the research that's going on, I've been doing some of the follow-ups and seeing what other countries are doing, because the United States really is sort of not talking about this too much.
That's right.
Yeah, Sweden, Canada. Canada is really taking a look at their schools right now because the kids are so sensitive that it's affecting their eyes, their brains, where they're seeing things sort of distort in their visual field, and their hearing goes up and down auditorially. Their skin itches and burns.
Right, right.
So,
yeah, there's two sources of electromagnetic radiation, and what you're talking about is the microwave radiation, which is the wireless routers, the cell phone towers, the Wi-Fi that's in the schools right now, and that's the thing that a lot of people are focusing on because it's, you know, brand new. It's just there, and we know that it has such a detrimental effect on the very structure of our DNA. So there's been studies on it, and we're aware of the danger to the human brain and to the brain tumors that will eventually develop. In fact, the cell phone companies contracted with a scientist named...
Was that George Carlos?
George Carlos, yeah, in the 1990s, I believe. And he researched the impact of cell phones on the human brain, and what he discovered was so powerful and so frightening that the cell companies terminated the contract with him and refused to allow him to publish his results. So, I mean, it is actually a lot of scientific research out there, mostly in Europe, that talks about the impact of microwave radiation on the human brain. And in America, so far, we're still not willing to look at that.
Right. Although it is showing up in fine print. I noticed that the iPhone, the BlackBerry, if you look at their little manual, way in the back in fine print that you almost need a microscope to read it.
Yeah, right.
It's starting to tell you that this could possibly be dangerous to your health, and I think that's in preparation for possible lawsuits in the future.
Right. I had a friend whose daughter died of leukemia, and she actually showed me a notice in her PG&E bill that talked about the fact that cell phone radiation might cause leukemia. And again, it was just like what you were saying. It's a way to put the responsibility on the consumer for protection against the harmful effects of electromagnetic fields, which is, of course, protecting them from the inevitability of lawsuits in the future.
Sure. I mean, you look at cigarette smoking. People really started smoking heavily during the 20s and 30s. And it took about 30 years for the lung cancer tumors to start showing up. But it took another 30 or 40 years for the United States government to actually do something and say something about it. And I think my concern at this point, especially if I was a parent of a young child, is we're looking at a whole generation. I mean, so what is this? We have 28 million children 8 to 12 years old, and half of them have cell phones. 47% of young adults have cell phones. So we're looking at a possible future 20 to 30 years from now. It's not only just the brain tumors, it's dysfunctional thinking that they're really concerned about. These are the kids that are going to grow up managing our world. And right now, the people that are managing our world are doing a terrible job. I can't even imagine what it might be like with a whole generation of people with dysfunctional thinking on top of everything else.
Well, of course, you're right. But the other aspect of that is that this technology also holds the promise of enormous intelligence, stimulation of intelligence,
right,
and emotional maturity, because on the internet, you can't be controlled. What you think and what you feel is you can research any subject and get all the different points of view. So the new technology also holds the promise of human evolution. So, but again, the threat to the very structure of the human brain, both of those aspects of it are there. And personally, I feel that Earthcalm does have a solution to the problem of microwave radiation. We have a device, it's called the quantum cell, that it consists of different circuits that operate as antenna that actually establish resonance with the Earth's electromagnetic field. And that gives you a ground. That gives you a way, a channel to dissipate the harmful effects of microwave radiation. And I think enables you to fully take advantage of the positive benefits of the computer, of being able to, of the internet.
Right. I'm sitting here right now. I have Wi-Fi. I have on my little pendant here. Did you see what I did? I went to a Indian bead store and I bought all the stuff and made a really nice Indian looking necklace.
Nice. I love it. Very nice. Yeah.
So we're surrounded. I mean, refrigerators, toasters, everything puts out EMF waves. So I think what you're saying is we need to use a little bit of common sense here. Like, I noticed that the laptop companies, they don't call them laptops anymore. I mean, they don't call them laptops. They call them personal computers. And there's probably a reason for that, because if a guy has it sitting on his lap, his sperm count is reduced 35% less. So they're thinking about this. They're just not coming right out and admitting it. You know, because it would have a dramatic impact on the industry, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. Well, they have actually one of the major aspects of microwave radiation is how it impacts your DNA, which is partly your ability to reproduce. But we actually have studies now that show how the Earthcalm quantum cell does protect you from cell phone microwave radiation. And what they've found is that the conductivity of the DNA is a key. Well, when you expose human DNA to microwave radiation, it lowers the conductivity of the DNA. And that means the DNA is not able to function as it's supposed to. It's not in resonance with the Earth's electromagnetic field. Its ability to be in resonance with the just with the body and with the ability of the body to heal itself, and just be the real issue here is that the body, the human being, is not a physical object. I mean, it is a physical object in space and time. It's not just a physical object in space and time. And in fact, to really understand human health and this issue of electromagnetic fields, you have to understand the human body is an electromagnetic field. We are in electromagnetic resonance with the Earth, and we are in electromagnetic radiation with, our appliances, with the refrigerator, with the computer, with the machinery of the computer. So these are the detrimental impacts of the technology on the human nervous system. But we have found that a way to measure the impact of microwave radiation is through the conductivity of DNA. And we have research that shows that the Earthcalm quantum cell restores that conductivity back to its normal levels. In fact, restores it even beyond the normal levels. And the reason for that, and this is something we really haven't discussed, but the alternating current, the electrical system in our homes, is the other great source of electromagnetic, man-made electromagnetic fields that's having a detrimental effect on our health. And that's something that almost nobody wants to talk about, because it's really threatening to the basic core of what we think of as civilization. Now, what happened is that in the early 1900s, a decision was made that instead of using direct current, like would be an example of that, would be like solar energy is stored in batteries, and then that energy is what's used to power the home. That's an example of direct current. It usually comes from, the energy is stored in a battery and then it's utilized in the home. And in fact, the irony of this is that every machine, like a refrigerator, a computer, laptop, they all use direct current once the electricity is actually being utilized inside the machine. But we use alternating current to bring the energy to our homes and into the machines that we use. And that alternating current is actually the source of the problem. And the reason for that is when we have chosen a very low frequency to have our household electricity. It's 60 hertz. So in our homes, we have electrical current that alternates, that goes back and forth at the speed of light 60 times a second. And that is very, very close to the biological frequency that our human body works with, which is 8, 10, 20, 30 hertz. So what happens is there's an entrainment that sets up, a resonance gets created, and energy is actually transferred from the wiring into the human nervous system and into the brain, and it has a detrimental, stressful impact. And this has actually now been proven. I mean, this is not a hypothesis anymore. We know that alternating current has this impact on the human nervous system. So,
yeah, I think we have J.P. Morgan to thank for that too. At the time he owned all the copper mines. He wanted to make use of all of his copper and everything. But
that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big part of it, just money. Then the other part was it's more difficult to transport DC current than AC current. So, but short of sleeping in a Faraday cage, what do you suggest? Like, here's what I do at night. We have the Earthcalm unit plugged into our wall, and I'm sure that helps neutralize a lot of this. And we unplug the Wi-Fi at night, and we actually sleep upstairs away from the computers. So we're trying to use some common sense. because one of the things I found out, and this is pretty recent research, they found out that, see, our pineal gland at night is supposed to do its job, producing all of its molecules, and it absorbs free radicals, puts out melatonin. But before the pineal gland does anything, it has to sense that you are asleep and it's nighttime. So that's the importance of sleeping in a dark room. You know, it sends that signal to your pineal gland, it's time to go to work. But what they recently found out was your pineal gland doesn't know the difference between light waves and electromagnetic waves. So consequently, if you're sleeping with your cell phone on right beside you, then your pineal gland is still picking that up like it's daytime, and it's not fully into its circuitry that it should be at night.
Well, that's a fascinating point, and I think it really shows to what an extent the use of alternating current in our homes has had on our health, and also on our very ability to be conscious and to evolve consciously. So, and I would take that as an example. There's a man named Samuel Milham, who was an epidemiologist up in Washington State. An epidemiologist is someone who looks at broad social trends in public health. And in the 1950s, there was a population in the United States where half the rural areas were not yet electrified, whereas the cities were all electrified. And he found out something that is just absolutely mind-boggling. What he found out is that the basic illnesses of civilization, cardiovascular, diabetes, depression, suicide, and there's a little more, I can't remember it now. But anyway, he found that those basic problems were skyrocketing in the cities, but were non-existent in the rural areas. And then he looked at the death statistics. I'm sorry, the fourth one was cancer. So cardiovascular, cancer, diabetes, and suicide or depression are the four main killers of the four things that people die of in a technological society. And in the 1950s, he found that in the rural areas, these people were not dying of these problems at all, whereas in the cities, they were already epidemics. And then as the rural areas became electrified, gradually those indicators increased as causing death. So it's really absolute incredible proof of the dangers of living in an environment using alternating current. And the pineal gland, again, you have to wonder about our basic moral values and what is right and what is wrong. And just one of the things I think that you can talk about in the last, century is how it seems that there's been just this increase in violence, 2 world wars. Look at what's going on in the world today. There's just been an incredible increase in violence, and also going beyond boundaries. That, for instance, you might look at GMO, you might look at just different decisions that were made that were what we would understand to be a moral value is no longer considered right or wrong. And I think part of that has to do with living in an environment that has become so saturated with man-made electromagnetic radiation.
Yeah, Jean, I honestly, I respect people like you for lots of reasons, but one of the reasons is I myself am going through something right now with the magazine. It's like people don't want to hear about a lot of these things that are going on. Like the last issue was on climate change. They don't want to hear about it because I think it reminds them that they're not doing anything. And I've always liked the Portuguese word for worry. It's preocupado, preocupado, and it means what you do before you get occupied. So I try to stay occupied, dealing with things, and then I have people come up to me and say, well, you're not being very spiritual, you're being negative. But to me, Gene, this is the spiritual path, because underlying all of these problems we're talking about is a spiritual solution, because they're spiritual problems of consciousness. And I think if we don't tackle these, if we don't embrace these and dissolve the fear aspect, you have to really deal with the fear and not make that part of the equation. But once you start looking at things like we're talking about with a feeling of spiritual warriorness, it becomes a whole nother world. And I think this is what the powers that be are afraid of. There are so many people starting to wake up, you know. And I had a guy call me about 3 weeks ago after the last magazine came out. He calls me up. He says, Rahasha, man, I read your magazine, and I tell you, it really pissed me off. I got it, and I watered it up in a ball, and I threw it in the corner. And I'm thinking, oh my God, okay, what's the rest of this conversation going to be like? He says, but that's not why I'm calling. He says, when I threw it over in the corner, my little girl walked in. She's 5. And she went over to the corner and picked it up and gave it to me. And it dawned on me, oh my God, I need to pay attention to this stuff no matter how uncomfortable it is, because she's depending on me. And the fact that she went and got it and handed it to me, he says that sort of woke me up as a parent, you know.
Interesting. Huh. Yeah, that is a fascinating story. Well, it is true. It's almost, when you look at some of the problems right now, it is almost overwhelming. But there are solutions to every problem. Every problem that we're facing today, there is a solution. And I think Earthcalm does have a solution to the problem of electromagnetic radiation. And we do have a device that plugs into your home, and it utilizes 8 different circuits that mirror different aspects of the Earth's electromagnetic field. And it recreates resonance to the Earth inside the home, so that your body has a way to release the stress that's generated in the body by the man-made electromagnetic fields. And the unit right now is so strong that you have to actually gradually introduce it, because if you just put it in all at once, it would make you feel irritated, make you feel uncomfortable. So, anyway, so we have 4 different steps so that you gradually introduce different levels of freedom from this irritability, this tension of electromagnetic fields. And we also invite people to experiment with it, because it actually, basically it was developed through a different kind of scientific process. It wasn't developed in a laboratory where there was some isolation of variables. It was really developed almost like you go to, you know, most people, I believe you wear glasses, but most people have experience going to an optometrist where, you know, well, this is better and this is worse. This is better and this is worse. And you can gradually come to clarify your vision. And in fact, the problem of man-made electromagnetic radiation is like being in pea soup, because it's everywhere. You can't get away from it. You can't go outside and be free of it, because once you go outside, there's the cell phone towers everywhere, the radio towers, and inside, and not to mention the high tension lines, and of course inside you have your home's electrical system. So there really is almost nowhere you can go to be free of it. So it's very difficult. How do you find out what's better and what's worse? And basically our nervous system does, the only way we can register electromagnetic fields is by noticing what's better and what's worse. And a lot of people, especially for me, it was, I noticed it in terms of headaches. A lot of people walk around with a slight headache all the time because that is actually how the body experiences man-made radiation. A kind of an irritability, an inability to relax, a feeling of, and then a slight headache. So for me, I was able to, by experimenting with the circuits, well, it actually all began with George Lakowski. For me, my whole area of research, I discovered that George Lakowski was a scientist who lived in the 1920s. And he was one of the first people to try to visualize and talk about the fact that we are electromagnetic beings and that we live in an environment that's basically electromagnetic, that the Earth has an electromagnetic field, the sun, everything operates in resonance with everything else. There's a certain balance that has been developed, and the human being is a part of that balance. And what we did when we developed man-made radiation is we just kind of put people in a grid, in a prison of electromagnetic, of alternating current, and separated ourselves off from that basic resonance with nature. But he actually developed a circuit called the Lakowski oscillating circuit. And he, in the 1920s, he had a clinic in New York, and he was actually healing people of cancer. And this was the same time that the AMA came in, of course, and closed him down because he was a quack, quote unquote. So his work, but there was a book out on the internet, it's called Waves That Heal by Mark Clement. And in that book, there's pictures of the Lakowski oscillating circuit. Anyway, I got a hold of the book and I made a circuit, and I found it made my headache release. And I started experimenting with it, and I found I was able to improve upon it and adding 7 other basic circuits that also increased our resonance with the Earth's electromagnetic field. And that is really the origin of the Earthcalm circuits, how they were developed.
So, yeah, I've always wondered about that. How much of this, like they say that true science starts out as intuition. You have to have a thought, then it keeps on with research and, having quantifiable results, you might say. But I was wondering how much of what you do, like what started you out doing this?
Well, what started me out was my own personal illness. I was just one of those people that was sick all the time, and I had no idea what was bothering me. About every month I would go to a different healer who would cost me about $500, and there would be promises, or not promises, but claims made, and I would try it, and it really didn't make any difference. And then I read an article that inside the home there was more pollution than outside the home. And of course, the pollution they were talking about in this article was not electromagnetic pollution, because that wasn't even a concept at the time, but that, they were talking about formaldehyde and all of that. So in any case, I decided to really try to create a home where there was, where I could be in a sanctuary, where there was no pollution. So I immediately started tearing the house apart, and the formaldehyde and all these different things. I tried the perfumes, all the different cleaning agents. I controlled for all of that, but it really didn't make that much difference. I was still sick. And so that began this journey to try to find some way to basically make myself feel better, make my immune system work, so that I could sleep at night and awaken refreshed and eat and just function better. My basic ability to function was impaired by something, and I didn't know what it was. And eventually, starting with George Lakowski, I just slowly became aware of the existence of the Earth's electromagnetic field. And it's a fascinating subject for people to explore. It's called the Schumann resonance. And it actually, you can kind of understand the Earth is basically married to the sun. It's like a marriage. And the result of that marriage is, well, the Earth is basically a spinning ball with an iron interior. And the iron kind of sloshes around as the Earth spins and creates a magnetic field around the Earth. And that magnetic field interacts with of course the sun is an exploding star. So the sun, the magnetic field of the Earth protects us from the sun's radiation, but also allows it to come in. So there's a marriage has happened such that life is possible on Earth. We can receive the sun's energy without being burned up alive by the sun. Right. And what the Earth's electromagnetic field looks like is there's a cavity between, so the ionosphere is really this shell that surrounds the Earth, in which there's all this electrical ions that encircle the Earth, and that is from the sun, but it's the sun coming in and interacting with the magnetic field of the Earth. So you have this ionosphere, and then that creates like an outer shell, and then you have the crust of the Earth. And in that space, what happens is that's the space of the Earth's electromagnetic field. And in that space, you have lightning that is occurring all over the globe at different points. Actually, 200, 300, 400 times a second, there's lightning that goes off somewhere. That lightning generates a field. The energy goes out around the Earth and meets itself on the other side and creates a standing field. And it's constantly being energized by lightning strikes, which also, of course, balance between the ionosphere and the negative ions of the Earth, creates a balance. That's what the origin of lightning is to create that balance. And then the lightning energizes this electromagnetic field. Now, the thing that's fascinating about that electromagnetic field around the Earth, it's called the Schumann resonance, but that every thought you think, every action that you take, every animal that exists, every plant that grows, is like embeds information into that electromagnetic field. And on the other side, anything that happens anywhere in the universe embeds information into the ionosphere, from the ionosphere into the Schumann resonance. So the electromagnetic field that we live in is actually puts us in touch with the universe. It's really a source of information that is infinite.
Okay, since you're taking us down this road a little bit, let's explore this a little bit, because it's a subject that interests me, because quite honestly, I think we've created a civilization that if it's up to our left brain to figure it out, we're doomed. We need a higher intelligence, we need a different perspective, a different intuitive process. And I think it's what Pierre Desjardins called the noosphere. And it surrounds the planet, and it is a little bit of all of us. And I think we're all sensing this. We're opening up to a global brain, a global mind, and this is where the answers are going to come from. I remember Einstein said that we're never going to get the solutions from the same level of thinking that created the problems. We have to evolve. And to evolve, I think this is what's important about anything, because what you're saying is we've evolved with all of these frequencies, all of this balance and everything, but we've interfered with it, with everything that we're producing, with the EMF waves. So anything that we can do to put us back in balance is going to allow our continual evolution to a higher level of consciousness, I think.
Well, absolutely. And I think the key is that we really need to develop a technology that is related to the Earth as a living, breathing environment that we live in. This is the challenge of our whole society, is to reestablish that connection with the living Earth, instead of course, seeing the Earth as something to be exploited and ignored, basically, or exploited.
Well, I think we're at a fork in the road, and the one fork is we're just going to keep doing business as usual, and we're going to pollute the Earth on every single level, from energetics right on down to the dirt, so bad that it will be impossible to live here. The other fork in the road, I think, is what you're talking about, because it's more realistic. We're not going to give up our computers, our cell phones, and it's not going to happen. So we need to look into this and really find a way to live with this technology, because like you say, it's the same technology that is destroying us in a lot of ways that could actually save us. But we have to work with it and find some way to balance with it. And I think that's what's important about your products. Like, what does this actually do, Gene? This little pendant that I'm wearing. What does it actually do as I'm sitting here by my computer?
Well, what it's doing is it's modulating information into the electromagnetic field that you are. And that modulated information, now, I don't know if you understand that. Modulation, the concept of modulation, electromagnetic fields, in essence, absorb information and then give information out. That's what electromagnetic fields do. That's one of their main functions. So, you know, you can talk about, we see in our nervous system, we see that our nervous system is based on kind of a physical, chemical form of communication between all the cells. But if you look more deeply, you'll find that all our cells also operate as crystals, as liquid crystal, that there's an electromagnetic communication that's always happening in our body, so that when you move your arm, and we are a whole, so that one part of your body knows what the other part of the body is doing and where it is and all that. So information is modulated into your nervous system that enables your body to reestablish and strengthen your resonance with the Earth, with the Earth's electromagnetic field. What has separated you off is the alternating current in your home and the microwave tower that's down on the corner and the wireless router. All these things create stress because they block that resonance. They break that resonance, that natural resonance, and create a resonance to man-made radiation. And that, of course, is the body starts to sicken. The immune system starts to not function anymore, and the problems with the heart, the problems with cancer, all those problems slowly start to develop.
Yeah, something I've noticed is actually, even when I'm in the house, since we have your product plugged into our wall, it usually doesn't bother me even if I'm not wearing this. But if I'm out in somebody else's house and they have Wi-Fi and everything, my heart does a little palpitation, and I start getting a headache. So I just wear this everywhere. I'm not too sure about all the science behind it. All I know is if I don't wear this, I get a headache. and my heart does a little thing, you know.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Well, that's, again, noticing that is interesting, that you do notice that, because that's what happened for me as well. And for me, it was mostly the headache. That was the way I could gauge whether something was helping me or making things worse.
Yeah.
But the heart is also extremely important, and we have some studies that show heart variability rates and how high blood pressure and all of that is related to living in homes surrounded by alternating current, and how the Earthcalm products do actually lower your blood pressure. And that's just a very objective way to measure the effectiveness of our products.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get in touch with a friend of mine. He works with heart math, pretty in depth, you know, and they do heart rate variability, because with every heartbeat that goes up and down, we're familiar with this. But within this, there are all kinds of oscillations, up and down. It would be interesting to wear this and do it, and take it off and do it, and see how that affects the subtleties of the heart, you know, because I know it does.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. That would be a wonderful study to do.
Yeah, I actually have some connections with heart math, so it might be interesting to do something like that.
I would love to.
People, you know how people are. They need to see results, and rightfully so. But the only results I need is the personal results of I either have a headache or I don't. But it would be nice to get more data, you know, for the people that are on the fence and the naysayers, and
right. Well, the other symptom that's very dramatic is for people who have asthma, and they put on a necklace or they plug in the home system. They'll find that there's warmth in their chest, and it's almost within a few minutes they're able to breathe more deeply. I mean, it can work that fast. But your constriction of your breathing is also one of the impacts of living in our environment.
Well, you know, I think it's only a matter of time, Gene. Actually, even Dr. Oz was talking about PEMF and using that for energetic healing. So if the government and if traditional doctors are finally getting to the point where they're realizing that you can use frequencies to heal, it's a small step to see that when those frequencies are out of phase or out of balance, that it could cause illness. So you're a little bit before the time has come, but I think it's opening up right now, because I think as we evolve and become more conscious, we're becoming more energetic. And the good news and the bad news is we're becoming more susceptible to energetic healing, and we're becoming more susceptible to energetic interference in our health. So it's a double-edged sword.
Well, and I think the other really positive development is that direct current electrical systems are actually now coming back. As, for instance, they're finding that direct current is actually now a more effective way to do high tension lines. Instead of using alternating current, they're using direct current. And of course, with the advent of solar, now we can have our own generating plant on our roof. We don't need to have the big power plant, you know, 50 miles away and all that, and pay for it. And now we can just generate our own electricity on our roofs and have that be a direct current system. We don't even have to use the alternating current. But for a while now, I mean, the future is inevitable that at some point in the future we'll be back on direct current for everything. And a lot of these problems will dissipate. Of course, the problem of microwave radiation will still be there, but a lot of the fundamental problems with the home electrical system will be greatly improved if we're in a direct current. And also, like I was saying, most appliances already work on direct current. It's just that the alternating current is used to get the electricity to the appliance. So this is a great source of hope, and I think also a new paradigm for a society where we do live in smaller communities and we're not so controlled by or at the whim of these large power plants.
Yeah, I think some just common sense can really take us a long ways and help protect us, because since EMF is part of the electromagnetic scale, it's probably under the same laws of the inverse square law, the propagation of light. So that the further we get an appliance or a microwave or a cell phone away from our body, it decreases it by 2. So I was reading, because I was going to get an earphone for my cell phone, but then I discovered that it magnifies it 3.5 times more. and it puts it right exactly at that part of your brain. But they have these air tubes,
right,
that puts a little bit of airspace in between. And you know, there's some common sense things we can do using your products. You know, putting our Wi-Fi as far away from us as we can get it, because it really decreases. You know, if you get an EMF wave detector and get close to your refrigerator, I mean, it goes up dramatically, especially on the back side. So never have your refrigerator on the back side with your bedroom in the next room. There's a lot of things we can do, and that one website has a lot of good information, the emfnews.org. You know, I got a lot from there. So I think we just need to be responsible of ourselves and educate ourselves and do the best we can and keep on keeping our minds open, you know.
right, absolutely.
Is there anything you'd like to add in closing?
Well, I would just like to add the possibility and for us to realize one of the great things I discovered is that when I have a quantum cell on my cell phone, and I noticed this when I was working out, I would go to the gym, and I noticed that if I forgot my cell phone, or not forgot it so much as I left it in my locker and just went and worked out on one of their bicycle things, I was able to actually work out longer if I had the cell phone with me. And that really blew my mind because, you know, it's but with your cell phone, with your quantum cell on it, you have the cell phone is actually a generator of electromagnetic fields, of microwave radiation. And if you modulate the Earthcalm circuits into that generator, it's actually producing a small field around you that's helping to protect you.
See, and what you're saying is so counterintuitive.
Right.
But the results is what we have to look at. Like
the results,
you know, my headaches and things like that.
Right, exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you spending this time with us, and can't wait to talk to you again. If you're ever back in Chico,
pleasure.
Get in touch with us.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Gene. Bye-bye.